Good morning, everyone. I am Tammy Pintabona. I am the Manager of User Support and Project Development. Welcome, and thank you for attending the second webinar in our SmartBorder webinar series 7512 InBond. For now, everyone is on mute. We ask that if you have any questions during the demo, please use the question section of the webinar toolbar to ask your question. I am also joined today by Kim Decker and Sandra Kingsley, who will be compiling the questions that we will be going over after the demo. I will also be recording the session, and it will be available later in the afternoon. In the handout section of the webinar toolbar, you will find some of the material that we will be going over today. These will also be found in the Help Desk knowledge base. Today, we will be focusing on the 7512 InBond module, and I have on your screen a list of topics that we will be going over. All right, so let's get started. The first thing I want to show you is I created some mapping documents that I thought may be of assistance. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken the actual 7512, and then I've taken the user interface. And you'll see that I did some mapping, and our user interface in SmartBorder for the 7512 actually mimics the 7512 document from CBP. So what I've done here, you'll see like item 1 is the field here on the 7512, and here it is on the user interface, and so on. And these item references actually coincide with, I'm going to pull that up here. Let me pull it up here. The instructions, the 7512 instructions. So you'll see here for, if I scroll down, this is the 7512 instructions through cbp.gov. And let's go to, let's see, item 8. So item 8 is the InBond via section on the 7512. It coincides with the InBond via section on the user interface, item 8. And if I go to the document, InBond via, here it gives you the actual definition of what is required for that field. A lot of times we're getting through the help desk very specific scenarios. My InBond is coming here, it's going there, what do I put here? So I thought these documents together may help users decide what data needs to go in what field. So these are in the handout section of the toolbar, and like I said, they're also going to be in the knowledge base. If you search 7512 webinar, you'll find all of these documents, okay? So with that being said, I'm gonna minimize these, and I'm gonna go right into the system. The first thing before we open up the actual 7512 module, I wanna go over the cargo manifest query.
Excuse me, Tammy, if I could interrupt for just a moment.
Sure.
It looks like there's audio problems. Is anybody else not able to hear? I'm going to put a chat. I'm not sure if they can hear you.
Is anybody else having any problems hearing me? Is it a distance thing, or is it not hearing at all? Do you know?
Oh, it looks like another user can hear you fine, so we will work with that specific user. You can carry on.
Okay. And again, this will be recorded, so the volume should be okay during the recording. So if you do miss something, I will send you the link so you can actually go through the webinar again, okay? So what I was referring to was the query cargo manifest. A lot of times when doing the 7512, a lot of the issues can be resolved by doing a query. There's two places you can do a query, okay? Through the regular ABI module, there's a cargo manifest query. This is where you can send your queries. The results get sent to you, and then you'd have to go into your ABI messages to review the results, okay? So that's one option. Another option is doing it through the Query Cargo Manifest standalone. I like this option because I can keep this open on my desktop, do what I'm doing, and then just revert back to it when I need to. Okay, so in this case, you would just put in your ocean issuer, your master bill information, or your airway bill information, hit send, and I'm going to just do, I have an example here, but I want to show you the results come up pretty quick. You don't have to go anywhere else to review the results. Okay, so you just wait a few seconds. And here's my information. Okay, so I'm just going to make this a little larger. So you're going to get all your information here. Voyage, flight, trip is important, date of arrival. In this case, an InBond was already done. If you were doing an InBond for the BOL, that would be blank. But this is already a completed BOL that had an InBond attached to it. Okay, here's my actual bill number. If there was a house bill, that would show here, packages. And then it also gives you all of the information, all of the dispositions that have been going on for this one particular bill of lading. So this is really important, and we'll get to that later on when I go through some errors and how to resolve these errors. This manifest query is going to come in very handy for that. So I'm just going to leave this open, okay? Just push it aside. So we're going to go right into the module itself. Oh, I can't go into the InBond module with that open, but it's very easy if I wanted to just to click into it, open it. I do have to close it to go back into the InBond module, so I do apologize for that. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open a new one. And if anybody's ever been on a training with me for entry, I always refer to this very first transaction page as a file folder. Nothing ever gets transmitted that is on the transaction page, and that applies to entry as well. So I like to call it as a file folder. So the first thing I would do is put in a shipper reference number. So I'm just going to put today's demo as my shipper reference number. You always need a client, okay? So in this case, Jack's Widgets is my client for today. All right, and then you open the InBond. All right, I don't want to bill two-party because I'm not worrying about billing, so that's fine. So I'm opening it up, and we have this option that comes up. Do you want to import another InBond data? This is what we call the copy feature. So it's different than entry. We don't have an option where you go file, copy. You actually have to create your transaction page on a new one, on a new 7512. You go in, you're going to get this pop-up. What's really nice about this is you can say yes. And let's say you have a customer, Toys R Us, and they're constantly bringing in puzzles, right? So you're constantly doing InBonds for these puzzles. You can actually create one, and then every other one, you can just pick it, and when you select it, it'll bring in all of the data. See, everything is already populated for me. So it's really like a copy or a template function. So that's an option too. I don't know how many of people use it, but it is kind of nice, especially when you have repetitive shipments that are coming across. So for now, I just want to say no because I want to go into a blank one, and I want to start blank. And I want to go over some fields here before we actually get into some examples. Okay, so we're going to start with the right-hand side, the entry number or the InBond number in this case, because we're in the 7512. I can choose to automatically assign it. If you send through the help desk a range of InBond numbers, we can load them so that when you hit the ellipsis here, it'll say automatic, and it'll just pick the next InBond in your series. You don't have to worry about typing in a number, okay? So that's a setting that you would do through us. The next thing you would pick is your class of entry. You will see that we do have a whole list of classes here. The only ones that you can transmit through QP is 61, 62, and 63. So you may say, well, why do you have the rest of them listed there? There are cases where there are certain ports that still require the paper 7512. So what happens is, if you're doing one of these warehouse or these vessel supplies, let's say I'm doing a vessel supply, i.e. 68. What I would do first for my transmission is I would pick 63 as my transmission, put my data in, transmit it, get it accepted. Then I would come back here, change it to a 68, and then print my 7512. The requirement for that particular port, they don't want to see 63. They already know 68 is implied as a 63. So it's just a way of changing that information on the 7512 form. But electronic transmission, it has to be a 61, 62, or 63, okay? Reference identifier. This is where Customs allows you a whole list of qualifiers here. So any one of these, you can say master bill, ocean bill, a store number. You can put the qualifier and then the applicable reference number in here. House bill is here. But the difference here is you would not put a house bill for an air shipment. And when we get to our air shipment, I'll show you there's actually a house bill field in the bill of lading. So if you had a house bill and it's an air shipment, you wouldn't have to put it in this section. Okay, that would go somewhere else. If you had a house bill for another mode, then you could put it here. Then we're going to go to the middle section here. You have your port code. That is the first port of entry. So where is this bond going to be submitted? All right, estimated date of arrival, your mode of transport. There's actually only 3 modes. It's air, fixed transportation, and all others. Very easy. So if it's not an air, it's not a fixed transport, like a pipeline entry, then it goes to 30. Then we have your check boxes here. Electronic ABI InBond. This has to be checked in order to transmit. I don't know, with the new rules now in effect for QP, there is no paper submissions at the ports anywhere anymore. At least there's not supposed to be. So this checkbox will always 100% be checked. Okay, then we have cafes. Cafes, I don't have a whole lot of knowledge about cafes. All I do know is you have to be approved by CBP, and there is a default setting that has to be set on our end to allow you to do it. Truthfully, I don't know if cafes are still being done in ACE. I know they were pre-ACE in ACS, but I'm not really sure. So, and I looked in our system and I don't see that anybody processes cafes in SmartBorder today. If you needed more information, let us know and we could definitely reach out to our ABI rep. FTZ. This checkbox right here, the field should actually be FTZ warehouse, because it's also applicable if you're doing a warehouse withdrawal. If you're doing a withdrawal from an FTZ, a zone, or a warehouse, this box has to be checked. And then there's some different fields that have to be filled in differently based on the FTZ or the warehouse, okay? So even though you're doing a warehouse and you're checking the FTZ, it's okay. It's the same indicator that gets sent to Customs. It's an FTZ or warehouse indicator, okay? AMS. AMS, this causes confusion because people don't know whether to check the box or not. This is my advice. If the bill of lading data exists in AMS, that has to be checked. If it doesn't, don't check it. So the easiest way to do it is to go back to your cargo manifest query it. If you're absolutely sure that the bill of lading is correct and it doesn't show up, then you leave the checkbox unchecked, as long as you're absolutely sure that you have the correct bill of lading, okay? One of the things, if you've ever gone to your ABI rep and they say to you, oh, you need to submit a long form, a QP long or a QP short, what they're really referring to is that AMS indicator. If you check the AMS checkbox, you're sending only, it's really like 4 or 5 rows of data. It's a very small subset of data that you're sending them. Because you're telling them the bill of lading already exists in AMS, they already have a bunch of information. So why should you send them the information they already have on file? If you have the checkbox unchecked, you're sending the long form, which means everything that you're putting on the screen is actually sending, because it's like the first time Customs is hearing about it, okay? So that's the difference between AMS and non-AMS, or QP long versus QP short. BTA, FDA. This is a yes or no, very easy. If you're doing an IE, you always put no, because BTA is exempt. If you're doing a 62, a T&E, then BTA is mandatory. So if I'm doing a type 62 here, then, and I have a Y, I'm telling customs that I am already filling out prior notice for this InBond, and the prior notice has to be done. Okay, and you can do that through our FDA prior notice standalone as well. Okay, for a 61, which is your IT, this can be a no, because you're actually filing BTA at the entry level, so it's not required. Okay, so IT is a no, 62 is a yes if it's in, then prior notice becomes mandatory, and then 63 is a no because it's exempt. All right, so then we get down to the bulk here. So entered or imported by. In this case, my importer is the one taking charge of this bond, and here's their IRS number. Then I have an InBond via. This is really important. Who is the carrier who is taking responsibility of this shipment? It has to be a bonded carrier, okay? One of the things that I will show you, and we have tickets about, I put in roadway, okay? And the system is telling me, oh, the last bonded carrier ID was this carrier ID. Do I wish to use it? And I could choose yes or no. Let's say that you have somebody who's constantly saying yes, but it's the wrong carrier ID. The way the system works is, for your filer code, the last time the carrier code was used and the bond was saved, it saved that tax ID. So let's say this is a typo, and it should be, instead of 12, it should be 14. I would change this to 14. Once I save this bond, the next time somebody goes to use roadway, it's going to come up with the 14- tax ID. So it saves the last saved tax ID that was used for that carrier. Okay? And then you have your port information, your consignee and your shipper information, and you can select it from your trans parties as well. And then this bottom portion down here. The bottom portion is actually only used if it was being transported by vessel. So if I put mode of transport, air, see how this information is whited out? It's because it's mode air is non-vessel, so that information is not mandatory. So that's the header information here. Then I go to the bill of lading. Okay, basic, value, voyage, flight, trip. If it's an air, if it's a truck shipment, voyage, flight, trip, just put a 1. Very simple. You need something in that field, so you can just put a 1. All right, and then I open up my bill of lading, and here's my bill of lading information. And remember, I had said earlier that if I have an air shipment, I'm going to have a house bill field. Well, that's the case. I left that mode for 40, and now it's giving me the house bill information. If I go back to the header, change it to a 30, come back here, you'll see the house bill field is gone. That's because the only way to transmit a house is to do it through that reference qualifier on the front screen. So I have my bill information, my total packages, weight, and then my foreign port of lading. My consignee and my shipper will come over from the header screen where I showed you where the consignee and shipper information was added. So you don't have to add it twice. Then I go to my containers. Container is a required field. If it's a non-containerized shipment, very simple, it's NC for no container. Okay, and then you have your description, your piece count here. So let's say I have 5 different items that I'm shipping, and my total piece count is 10. So if I were to put like 2 of this, and then I add another row, and so I have 5 rows with piece count of 2 each, that 10 must match under my general tab, my packages here. So that's a validation. So this is very important. It's a double check to make sure that you're entering the correct packaging. So if I put 5 here inside of my containers, my piece count here must total up to 5. Otherwise, you are going to get a validation. You're going to have to go in and fix it. Okay? So you put your piece count and a description. Another issue that we see common inside of the help desk for 7512 is people are putting information and then they're entering. They're going like this because they want it to print nice on the actual form. What happens when you use enter, you're actually adding a carriage return. So the way that the transmission is sent, it's just a string of data. So we tell people, try not to hit enter when you're entering a description, because that transmits a blank description inside of the transmission, and you'll get an error for blank transmission or blank description. So that's, and then they come back to us and say, no, my description's not blank. I have information in here. So just be careful of that. You don't want to add carriage returns or hit enter inside of the description, okay? Marks and numbers is mandatory for everything. If you have none, then you just put none. Very basic, okay? Tariff information. Tariff information is not required for an IE, okay? So all other tariff information, all other types are tariff information, and value and weight and quantities are required. Okay, the quantity is based on the tariff that you put in, and it's the unit of measure that's based on that tariff. Okay, hazardous material, that's only if applicable. Now we get to the general tab here, the notify party. Notify party is if you want somebody else to receive notify information. You can put a name and address in here. And this is only used for non-AMS. So if you're doing a non-AMS and you want somebody to receive a notify information, which is all the disposition codes based on this InBond, you can put the notify name and address and phone number inside of here, okay? The secondary notify party is the broker, okay? We have a default here that will actually put in the notify party for you. And this is the only way that you are going to get any of the dispositions that are filed against this InBond. So it's actually made up of the port code, the filer code, and then office code if applicable. So we have defaults that we can set so that information automatically populates, so you never have to worry about it. Okay? So once you fill that information in, you're pretty much done. You have a footer, and this is just the footer information that is going to print on your 7512. If you want to print a 7513, if you're doing an IT for in-transit goods, you can fill this out as well. Okay, so then we have a validation tool up here. So you hit validation tool before you save. It'll give you all the information that you're missing. And then once you're done, you would save it. I have all those fields, so I'm not going to worry about that. But I'm just going to exit without saving, and then you would come back here, and here's where you transmit. So if this was saved, I would be able to transmit. Okay, but what I wanted to do is first go over all of the fields before we get into the actual type. Okay, so what I've done is I've saved examples. So our first example here, so I'm going to open it up. I would have created my information here and then gone into my document and then here. So I'm doing a 61 first. I fill in my information. Oh, the one thing I did forget about, and I apologize, is the left-hand side here. You would only fill this in if this bond was, if this bill of lading on this bond was related to an entry number. So if you were canceling out an entry number or associating the bond to an entry number, you would put the filer code and the entry number here. If I was doing an along with the port, if I was doing an FTZ, I would put my FTZ firm code here with the date. Okay, so that's only if the bill of lading is associated to a foreign trade zone or a previous entry number. Okay, so in this case, I don't have any of that information. I'm doing a 61. I auto-assigned my InBond number. My entered withdrawal is all information here. I've added it. You'll see I added the consignee and the shipper here. So when I go into my bill of lading, all of the information is already populated over. I have my bill of lading. It's 12 pallets, weight, okay, all my information. It's no C, it's non-containerized. I do not need my tariff information, so that's not required. I go over to descriptions. I have 12, so that actually matches my 12 pallets, so I'm not going to get that validation. I did have some marks and numbers. So I would complete all of that. I would come out to here, save it. Okay, so it would save as complete. And then here's what my print preview of the 7512 would look like. And it has the barcode written here, all of my information. All right. If I wanted to do the 7513, I could have filled that out. And then there's also a print preview of the 7513. It's going to come up with no information because I didn't add any extra information. It only pulled the information that was applicable for the 7512 for the bond. Okay, so that's how you would do that. And then to transmit, I would do my InBond and I would transmit InBond. Okay, and then I could view my InBond for messages. All my messages would come here. Now, let's say I get this all accepted and I say, oh, I made a mistake. I have to change something. So the 7512 is a little different than entry. There is no bill of lading update. There is no replace. It's actually a full InBond QP delete and then a QP add. So in that case, I would say InBond, transmit the delete InBond. Get my accepted delete, make my changes, save, and then come back out and then hit transmit InBond. Okay? So I'm just going to quick go over just the T&E, IE. They're pretty much the same, little bit of information different. In this case, it's an AMS. It's all modes except air, so it's very similar. The difference in this one is once I get to my tariff information is mandatory for this, this class. Okay, so it's the same process, everything populates. Okay, what I want to do now is I want to get to air because that one is different. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to go to my air example, double click it. All right. So in this case, I have a shipment that is going to Detroit to Texas, okay, via air. It's an AMS. It's a type 61. I have my information. You'll see down here the air issuer code master bill. Now, if you've ever seen, everybody has seen an airway bill number, okay? It's usually 3 digits, and then you have, I believe, 8 digits after that, okay? That makes up the airway bill. The first 3 digits is your IATA code. So, for example, Delta would be 006, and then my bill number might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And on the header screen here, it's actually asking for the air issuer code. So 006 identifies Delta. So I would put the issuer code or the SCAT code of DL here with my bill number, which is my 8 digits. Okay, so I'm dropping the 006 and I'm replacing it with DL. That's for the header information because that's what customs needs to see in that transmission for that data. But if I go to my bill of lading now, you'll see that I have my 006 here with the same bill number, the same 8-digit bill number. So what I've done is I've used the IATA code for 006 in my bill of lading, but on the front screen, I've used my SCAT code. That will cause problems and you'll never get an accepted air InBond if you don't do it this way. SCAT on the front screen, IATA code on the bill of lading screen. Your bill number is always the same on both. It's the 8 digits minus the prefix, minus the IATA prefix. Okay, I have my house bill here. In this case, the InBond that I'm doing was done in AMS. It was manifested as a regular or a simple bill. A regular or a simple bill just means I have a master, nothing else. I have no house information. If I had it, if it was manifested in AMS as a house, that means that I have to have a house bill associated to it as well. Again, go back to the cargo manifest query, that will give me my information. If I transmit this and it gets rejected for no house bill, I could go to my query cargo manifest and it will give me the house bill. Or maybe I put a house bill in and it was manifested as a regular or a simple, which means master only, okay? All of my information is here. Everything else for the air is the same, except for the difference in the header SCAC versus the IATA code on the bill of lading, okay? And it'll make a little more sense once I go over some rejects onto what happened and how to fix it, okay? So that's really the only difference for air. So we've gone through the 61, 62, 63. I've showed you the difference in the air types. So what I want to do now is I just want to quickly go over some error messages. So what I've done is I went through the help desk and I got some frequent error tickets that came to us where people couldn't figure something out. And I just want to show you to maybe that'll help you in the future. So for the QP bonds, okay, so this reject came up, invalid voyage flight trip. So I can tell from the message that it was an air shipment and the voyage flight trip was 8927 with an estimated date of arrival of 4/13. Invalid voyage flight trip. To me, that can be very confusing, and it is. What in AMS, when you send this to Customs is looking for this voyage flight trip number under this estimated date of arrival. So the first thing I say is do the cargo manifest query to verify that you have the proper voyage flight trip number. If you do, check your estimated entry date, because chances are the estimated date of arrival may be 4/12. And what that means is that voyage flight trip is not valid for that estimated date of arrival. So if you change it to 4/12, chances are, well, I do know because I saw the ticket, but it got accepted. So invalid voyage flight trip doesn't always mean you have a problem with the voyage flight trip. Check your estimated date of arrival. In this case, bill not on file, all right? So do a cargo manifest query, and you may have the AMS checked when it doesn't apply. So do your cargo manifest query. If it comes up bill not on file, double check that you have the proper bill, and chances are you may just need to uncheck the AMS. Quick, easy fix. Here's another one. InBond destination must equal the DDPP for type 63. Remember, for a 63, that's an immediate export. Immediate export means it came into 0901, it's going back out to 0901. If your shipment came into 0901 and it's going out to 3801, well, it no longer is an IE, it's a T&E. So it transported from one port and it's leaving another port. So in this case, as long as you verify your incoming port and your outgoing port is correct, you would probably need to change the type to a 62. Okay, so that's just one thing to look out for. I already explained the regular versus the simple. So in this case, invalid bill type. So they have a master bill with no house bill. So the first thing I would do is do my cargo manifest query. If my master bill is correct, look to see if it was manifested as a house. And vice versa, same thing goes. If I had a house bill and I get invalid bill type, do the query, maybe there is no house bill, I need to take the house bill off. So it goes as a regular or a simple. Invalid InBond entry type, it goes back to those warehouse and those vessel supply types. Remember, those cannot be transmitted. So I can tell from the error message that they picked a 35, which is fine for the print of the 7512, but they have to change it to a 61 to get the transmission accepted first. Okay, so those are my error messages for the bond. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is the InBond control. So if you're doing bonds for a carrier, it's actually the carrier responsibility to make sure that bonds are closed. Closed means arrived and or exported, okay, depending on the type. So what happens is you can do a bond. Let's say I've done this bond, I've sent it, it's done. I can come in here and I can open up the InBond control, and you'll see because I'm inside of an already created bond, my InBond number for this transaction already populated. Then I can say, you know what? I can export it. I can export from the destination. Based on the type of action that you're doing, different fields will be highlighted. So in this case, I would fill in the master bill, the port code, put in the actual arrival date and time if I want to export it or if I want to arrive it, okay? What more can I say here? Another thing I can tell you is, let's say we have carriers who they don't do the InBonds for the 7512, right? So they can come in, or they can have their broker come in, open up new, don't fill anything out, and they can get access to the InBond control without having to do the bond in SmartBorder, okay? So the only difference is you'd have to type in the bond number. So you may get a list from your carrier and they're saying, hey, because you did these bonds, can you please go through and close them? So you can go export, put the bond number, master bill port, transmit, do the next one. You can do a whole bunch at one time without having to create transactions. So we really refer to this as the InBond control standalone, meaning it can be used all by itself outside of an actual InBond. Okay. One thing I did want to mention too that I forgot is there's a new validation since these went into ACE from ACS. Carriers now, see where it says InBond via, and I have Day & Ross as my carrier with their tax ID. Day & Ross may be a carrier where they select who can process bonds on their behalf. So let's say I'm broker ABC company and I'm doing a bond for Day & Ross. They don't even know who I am. I'm going to get a reject saying that the bond is not valid. Okay, so what you want to do in that case is contact Day & Ross, have them go to ACE, the portal, and add me as a broker who's allowed to use their bond. So we've been seeing quite a few of that. So if you happen to see it and it's bond not allowed or bond invalid for carrier, you want to make sure you go to the carrier and they add you as a party to be able to use them as for QP. Okay, so the next thing I want to go back to my errors here. Oh, if I find it. All right, I want to go to the top because I have some InBond control error messages. So the previous InBond must be arrived. So that tells me you're trying to export the bond, but it hasn't been arrived yet. So you would have to find out when it arrived, go do your arrival first with the proper date and time, send it, then you'll be able to export. Arrival date before departure. This is a tough one because this is something we can't do. The trade cannot mark a bond as departed. Per the CATAR, the 7512 document should be presented at the U.S. Customs booth for the InBond departure and destination port. So when the carrier goes to the booth as their departure, Customs there needs to depart the bond. So without the bond being departed, you can't arrive it or export it because it has to go in sequential order. So when this happens, you have to go to the port and tell them, I have this carrier, I have this InBond, it hasn't been departed, but it's been arrived or exported. So I don't know what information they'll need from you, but the port actually has to depart it before you can do anything else, okay? It's something out of trade control. InBond number already arrived, pretty basic. If it's an IT, you're all set. If it's other than an IT, then you need to export the bond, okay? So it's somebody already arrived it. Export date is in the future. That date and time of either the arrival or the export, it also goes off of the time. So if you set, let's say 4/29 as the arrival, and then you send 4/29 as the departure, you have to make sure the time for your departure is later than the time used for the arrival. So it all goes in, it's just, yeah, you can't, it's the same thing as you can't export before arrival, and it goes based on date and time. Okay, so it may just need an adjustment in your time. Export date before arrival date, okay, that's the same thing. It might be a time issue. Another one is entry type not eligible for export. If it's an IT, well, you can't export. So once you arrive on IT, it's considered closed. The other two, the T&E and the IE, you have to arrive and export in order for it to be considered to be closed. Okay. And then I have one more, export date already on file. So that means somebody already closed it and you're all set. Okay. So one more thing I want to show you is on the home page, what I've done is under the related links, I've added the InBond error dictionary. And if I go back to my errors here, just for a quick second, you'll see every error has a number. Okay, so sometimes it's easier to look up the number. So if you ever wanted to look this up and say, oh, what does this actually mean? You can say, okay, 167, go back to your home page. Just click on InBond Error Dictionary. Oh, it'll pop up. I download it. I open it. Oh, there we go. So what I can do is I can scroll and see the numbers are all right here. So I can scroll down to 167. Now this may not help you in all cases because some of it is a little technical, but in some cases it can. It can give you an idea of where to look. So if I go 167 when the action code is a 5, 6, or 7, the status of the InBond indicates that the InBond is already exported. So in this case, it did tell me. Like I said, I mean, you can use this. It's right there at your fingertips. If you need more help, definitely send in a ticket and we can help you. But this sometimes is a good reference source, and it's right there at your fingertips, right at the related link. And we also have the 5106 error dictionary. I've also added the regular 8th error dictionary too, which encompasses the release, cargo release messages. Okay. So that's what I have for everything. I think I've gone through. Sandra, did you see that I missed anything?
Did you cover the cargo manifest query?
Yes, that was in the beginning.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, like I said, this is a really great tool to give you the information. So does anybody have any questions? Anybody want me to be more specific on anything? Hopefully I gave you the information you were looking for. Kim, do we have any questions?
Yep, I have just a few here. My first one says, how do I process a split InBond shipment? Can I do it all on one bond?
No. So what you would do for a split is you would have multiple. So if you have two, then you'd have two bonds. And then inside of your bill of lading screen, here's where you would put in the manifest quantity. So your manifest, let's say this is 10 pallets. But for this InBond, I'm only clearing 4 because 6 will be going on another one because it's split. The only thing you have to remember is if I obligate 4 for this bond, it only leaves me 6 for the next one. So if I do another InBond and I mistakenly don't put a 6 here and I send it as the 10, the second InBond will get rejected for an overage. So Customs in AMS does keep track of that. So you just want to be mindful of that your total InBond quantities have to match the total packaging. So you would need multiple bonds.
Okay, my next one here that I have is, my bond needs to be arrived and we mistakenly arrived and exported it. Can we undo it?
No, that's not something that the trade gives us control in. I wish they would, but you would have to go to the port to have that either unexported or unarrived. I'm not sure if you had to do that, what documentation they would need or what they require, but that is something that would need to be done at the port.
Okay. And I have a last one here. It says, we created a bond with a dummy InBond number until we received the information for the bond. We now have all the information and the bond number is grayed out. Do we have to create a new one or can we still use this one?
You can't use it, but the good thing is what you would want to do is create a new one. Just put your shipper reference number in and your client. When you open and it asks you if you want a copy, then you can go back to that one where you used as like a form of a template. Pull that data in so then it would reassign an actual InBond number and then go through the screens just to verify your dates and then you should be good. So it's not like you have to rekey a lot of information.
Okay, that's all that I have. Sandra, do you have anything?
That's all I have as well, in case anybody wants to add any last minute ones.
Okay, while we're waiting, I do have a poll that I want to put out. I just want to see if I have given you the information that you were looking for. I know it's a lot of information. I tried to get as much in as possible. Hopefully I didn't get too much information in. But if you would just let me know if you got the information that you were looking for. These webinars were asked by our users. They were designed by our users as far as topics. So we just want to make sure that we're giving you exactly what you're looking for. As I said, this is the second webinar we've done. The first one was last month for Proforma Web. We will look for emails for the next couple that we're going to be putting out and once we assign dates to it. But we just want to make sure that we're getting you the information that you're looking for. I'll give a few more minutes for that. Okay, perfect. So yes, I just want to make sure we're on the right page. It looks like we are. Everybody answered yes, so that's good. I appreciate that. Thank you. You know, again, any feedback, let me know. This is being recorded, so we will send the link out. There is another one this afternoon at 2. But if there's no other questions, we can stay on the line if anybody has anything. But otherwise, I appreciate your time and spending the time with us. And for now, be safe and have a great day.